What up, YouTube? So today we're gonna be starting on the K20a Type R build, engine build series, and I think we're just gonna do maybe like 2 or 3 videos. But today mainly we're gonna be focusing on just getting the block all cleaned up and probably the crank installed, and maybe do pistons and rods. So this is a K20a Type R engine. So I've already started, as you can see, cleaning up the bores and everything with the tool right here. This tool you can get from Harbor Freight for, I think it was $28, and just a little WD-40 to help clean it up and keep it, lubricated while you're spinning the stone blocks. So I did these 2 so far, and next I'm gonna do these 2, and then after we get this all pretty much cleaned up, then we can flip this block around, and then we'll start installing the crank. We all got all new bearings and everything pretty much over here. So we got our oil pump, our new timing chain kit, basically everything. The girdle, the head is somewhere in here somewhere. We'll be getting to that probably next video though, but mainly got to focus on the block today. So right now I'm probably just gonna go ahead and finish honing these up, clean this up, and then we'll take it outside and pressure wash everything to make sure that there was a little dust inside of here. So I just want to make sure everything's clean as far as that, so we can get to the crank. I did have the crank micro polished already, so that'll be ready to slap in, and then I'll show you pretty much how to just the simple things that you need to know on how to install the parts into these motors. They're very simple if you take your time and do it right. It should start up first try like usual, and it shouldn't have any issues. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock out these 2 cylinders, and then we'll come back with the crank, spin this thing around, and start getting that installed. All right, so we're back now, and we got all 4 cylinders honed out, and they're pretty much got a perfect crosshatch on them. That's pretty much what you need, because you want the rings to seat as best as possible, especially for break-in, or you will have smoke coming out the exhaust and you'll have to redo all this again. So that's pretty much ready. I also cleaned up the sides and everything, all the old Honda Bond that was all on here, so especially off the water pump housing. Right now I'm gonna go pretty much pressure wash it, and then I'm gonna spray the block, make it look clean, and then we'll come back, bring over the crank, and start getting that installed and installing the bearing. So I'm gonna go ahead and start doing that, and then we'll come back. All right, so we're back now. We got our Type R pistons, our pins, our wrist pins, clips, our bearings for the crank and for the rods, and then we got our scat rods. So these are going to be upgraded, so slightly built Type R, still same compression but stronger on the bottom end for sure. And the motor's pretty much all cleaned up and ready to go. Just got to take off the girdle, and then we can start slapping the crank on there and putting the bearings in, and our thrust washers as well. And then we'll put our Honda Bond, seal it up, and turn the crank, make sure everything is all good and everything. So I'm gonna get my Lucas as well. We got our assembly for the torquing of the rod bolts, and I'm gonna use it also for the girdle bolts as well. And I'll get the torque specs and figure all that. But right now I'm gonna take this girdle off, and then we'll get to the bearings and we'll come back. All right, so we're back now. We got our crank girdle off, and we installed our bearings. So the bearings from the crank and the block are different. This one on the block has the little keyway right here on more the left side, and then on the crank girdle they are in the center. So they are different, and they will not go and swap over on each other one. So make sure they're clean behind them, and make sure they're clean when we put our assembly lube. I use like Lucas. I think it's the best for breaking in and everything. I've always used it. So we got our micro polished crank right here, and I'm gonna get ready to basically put that on to the block with the thrust washers, and then I'll put some assembly lube on this, and we're gonna Honda Bond it, and we're gonna put our new crank seal, rear seal rear main seal, and we'll torque it down. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock that out, and then we'll come back, have everything torqued, and then we'll start getting to installing the pistons onto the scat rods, and getting the new bearings onto the rods as well, and torquing those all down. And I believe that'll probably be it for this video, just so you guys can, you know, see exactly what I do and take it slow this time. So I'm gonna just pretty much, we're building the bottom end assembly, which is the short block. Long block would be including the head. So short block is literally just pistons, rods, crank with bearings. So yeah, I'm gonna start putting this crank in, and then we'll come back, get the spin, make sure everything is good, and then we can start assembling the pistons and rods. All right, so we got our crank bolted on and torqued down with the girdle, and we can spin it now. Perfect spin by hand. So that's pretty much it as far as the crank and block. Now we can get to the pistons and rods. So I'm gonna start assembling these with the wrist pins and everything, get those ready, and then we'll actually get to the piston rings next, and start getting those installed into the block. So I'm gonna go ahead and start getting these ready, and then we'll come back. All right, so we got the pistons, Type R pistons, all on the scat rods now. And when you're doing these, you want to make sure the crevices from the bearings are all on the same side. So as you can see, I put them all on intake side. You don't want them on opposite ends, because that's all balance and everything. So the thrust and everything all needs to be on the same side. So next thing we need to do is start getting the rings on here. So I like to start with the bottom sets. I guess these are like the washers, and we're gonna get these, and then we'll go through the first and seconds. These ones usually have like something identifying the top, so they usually have a marking. I'll try to get that for you once we get to that set. But yeah, right now I'm gonna go ahead and start with these rings, and then we'll come back and get to the first and second. All right, so I got all the rings ready, pretty much preset and everything. So now it's time to get to the install. So I usually use this right here. I've had this for years and it works really good. So we're just pretty much gonna compress the piston inside the cylinder. So there is a certain way you have to have the rings. I wanted to show you guys, see if I can get to show you the marking. All right, so you see how that's the indication to let you know that that's the upside of the piston ring. So on number 1 and 2, you have to have that. When installing piston rings, always make sure that each one is at its own corner. So the opening gap on this one is this one, and then the opposite one, which would be the bottom one, is on the opposite side, and then the 2 lower rings are the same as far as that as well. As far as the intake side, so usually what I do by indicating the intake side is usually the water pump housing and the starter opening. So the intake side and the arrow will be facing this way. So it's like to kind of pre-drop it in here. But actually, before I do all that, let me go get my bearings installed. So also the same on these ones, bearings go on the same side on the clips. So make sure the numbers are matching, because there's side with numbers and there's side without numbers. So yeah, so I'm gonna put the bearings in. We're gonna start doing one by one, and we'll come back and I'll show you. We'll spin the crank, make sure everything's going smooth as possible. All right, guys, so we're back now, and we did happen to come across a problem. So as you can see, the piston is literally sticking out of the block. I think the rods are too long on here. So I think as far as that, we're gonna have to figure that out, what's going on, because yeah, that'll literally be going and hitting the head pretty much. So most likely gonna have to take off all these pistons and get new rods and figure out what was actually these rods came from, because this is the second one I installed just to make sure, and yeah, it's doing the same thing. So I mean, it'll go all the way down. As far as going inside the bore and everything, but yeah, it just, when it comes back up, it literally comes up, and yeah, that's pretty much out. So yeah, I'm gonna take these back out, and we will continue this series once we figure that out. But the crank's good. It spins perfect. I might as well take this out right now if I can. And what we're gonna do is end this video, and the next video we'll hopefully have the new rods and figure out the issue, let you guys know exactly what happened, and then we'll get back to the build. Right now I'm gonna be getting to the next build, which is the B16. We need to finish up now that we got the crank for that as well, so I guess we'll hop on to that block on the next video. If you haven't, like, share, subscribe, comment, let me know what you guys think, and see you guys on the next video.